Let's get ready to take the plunge on this edition of the Seacoast Sports Forum. Sherm Chester, along with Coach Jim Tufts, and a special guest today on the Seacoast Sports Forum, a man whose face may be familiar to you, but his voice sure is. He is a senior manager of communications for the Special Olympics of New Hampshire, Mark Erickson. And of course, Mark, many years part of that morning waking crew at WOKQ. Welcome aboard.
Yeah, thank you, Sherm. And hi there, Coach. How are we all doing?
Great, Mark. Good to see you.
Well,
good to see you too.
It's a big occasion coming up for the Special Olympics of New Hampshire, something that you've been involved with, Mark, for many years. And during that time when you were at WOKQ, spent many years jumping into that frigid Atlantic Ocean off of Hampton Beach in February and raise funds for and awareness of Special Olympics of New Hampshire. So tell us, both gentlemen, I want both of you to tell us how you got involved with the Penguin Plunge. Mark, you want to lead it off, or Jim? I don't care. Flip a coin.
Jim, why don't you take it?
Okay, there you go. So back, I believe it was in 2000, Mary Conroy and her staff was always looking for ways to raise money. And the plunge had become something that other areas were doing. So she rounded up 150 of us, I believe it was, that first plunge in 2000. And it was pretty spectacular, the first one that we ran for the water and then got to go into the Ashworth and take showers and they had a reception for us and the like. And it caught fire and just kept growing. I have to tell you a personal story for me. So I was, representing our team and I thought, okay, we got to do this. So I got on some flippers, like I was going skin diving, and black coaching pants and a Pittsburgh Penguin shirt. And of course, Mark will tell you when they start counting 10, 9, 8, they never get to 0 because everybody just starts running. And so everybody starts running. And if you've ever run with flippers on, it doesn't work. So I was lumping down, and I get to the water. And when you get water on those things, you can't pick them up. So I turned around so I could go backwards and I could actually make some progress. And the wave hits me, knocks me right off my pins. And I go down and I'm completely under. And at this point, everybody's running out. And I'm laughing at myself, but I can't stand up. And everybody's just running by thinking I'm having a wonderful time. And I eventually got out and said, I'm never wearing the flippers again.
It looks so easy on TV, huh?
I have a similar story, Jim, believe it or not. I don't remember what year it was because after a while it all becomes kind of a blur to me. But there was a year that we let the radio station listeners determine what my costume was going to be. They submitted some ideas, and this family created this giant foam lobster costume for me to wear. So I'm on the beach, and in those days I was a little bit larger than I am now, and I'm in this giant foam lobster getup, and I go running into the water, and just as I dive into the water, it dawns on me, I'm wearing like 15 pounds of sponge. And I sink like a stone. And at the time, Jamie Sullivan was the chief of police in Hampton. He's the town manager here now, but at the time he was the chief of police, and he was doing the plunge. So he was in the water with me, and luckily he was, because he basically grabbed me by the lobster claws or whatever, and pulled my sorry butt out of the water and back onto shore.
Wow.
It's a spectacle. I mean, I used to say, Sherm, when we lined up at the starting line there, and now there's several waves, but when there were oodles of us, and they have a snow fence on either side, and it's just like an Exeter Winnicott game. There's got to be 1,000+ people down there to watch us crazies and see if we'll actually, in some cases, they've donated and made contributions, and to see if we're actually going to go through with it. And it's an event. There's swimsuit, and there's all kinds of outfits, and it's a happening.
What is the temperature average, Mark, down there when you guys jump in?
It's somewhere in the high 30s, maybe 40.
38, 30. So the ideal day, Sherm, is a blue, sunshiny day with no wind, because the sun actually kind of warms you up, and the sun warms you up, and then you hit the water, and it doesn't feel quite, it's okay, but it's.
And the idea is you just go right in. You don't do that toe in the water. Oh, this is cold.
No, you got to go. You got to hit. You find a wave. You find a wave coming at you, and you hit it as fast and hard as you can so that you're soaked, and you stand up and run back to the beach.
Jim, I would add to your perfect day scenario that at noontime, the tide should be somewhere close to high.
Oh, yeah.
Because if it's a low tide at noontime, it's a long run into the water and an even longer run back out of the water.
It gives you a lot of second thoughts. Should I be doing this? Go ahead.
It gives you too much time to think about it.
The trip out needs to be, you're absolutely right, Mark. It needs to be as short as possible, back to those towels where you can warm up a little bit.
How many years has this been going on?
This year will be the 24th Penguin Plunge and the 15th high school plunge.
Okay.
So let's break this down for you.
Yeah.
I'll walk you through the whole thing. What we kind of internally refer to it as is the winter water sports season. And that encompasses the high school plunge, which is this year, Saturday, February 11th, and the original, the biggest and the best, the Penguin Plunge, which this year is Sunday, February 12th. And that happened totally by accident. We got to a point, as Jim said, this started out even, I think, a little bit bigger than anyone thought, and then it just grew from there. And somewhere along the line, 15 years ago, the fire department, because as I think everyone knows, we stage everything inside the Hampton Beach Casino ballroom. And the fire department said, you're hitting the capacity limit of the ballroom and you've got to do something. So the decision was made to, all right, we'll do the school groups on the Saturday and then the grown-ups on Sunday, which did a whole bunch of things. First of all, it made the school groups as its own day an even bigger and more important thing for the school groups. It allowed us to deal with the capacity issue at the Hampton Beach Casino Ballroom. And the casino ballroom likes it because on Sunday now, it's an all grown-up crowd in the ballroom. So before the plunge, the bar is open. I'm just saying.
I don't know if I'd want to warm up before, maybe after, but not before.
There are a few people, Sherm, that are stumbling towards the water. Trust me.
Now, Mark, you have WMUR Channel 9 has been a supporter of the Penguin Plunge for years.
Since day one, literally.
All right. Tell us about that connection, too.
The folks at WMUR are very kind to us and have been very wonderful through the years with their support, with airtime, with advice. They even over the years have provided some technical support for us during the day of the event. They they own a remote control camera that's on top of the Seashell Pavilion stage down there. So they in past years have allowed us to make use of that camera and do some direct connection stuff for us. That sort of thing. They are terrific. Mike Haddad and Kevin Skarupa lead the plunge. You talked about the water temperature, and I'll tell you that Kevin Skarupa goes in every what we call wave. When we're at the beach, New Hampshire Fish and Game and some local fire departments, and it varies from year to year, but they have the divers in the water. They're responsible for everyone's safety. And depending upon how many divers they have available on a particular day, they determine the size of the group that we can put in the water at any one time. So they might say to us, okay, we have enough divers to keep an eye on 60 people, so no more than 60 people. Or we've got enough divers, you can throw 125 people in. But whatever they say goes, because they're in charge of everyone's safety. So however many waves there are, there can be 2 or 3 waves on a Saturday, another 2, 3, or 4 waves on the Sunday. And then there's sort of a secret squirrel wave, because Friday and into Saturday, the ROTC group from Winnicott High School works so hard to help us out and get everything set up for the Penguin Plunge that we need to do down at Hampton Beach. And we give the ROTC crew their own special wave without a big crowd or anything.
COVID obviously threw this event a big curveball. Now it's back in focus online. But what my question is, if people who can't travel just because of distance, they still can get involved, correct?
Well, we did our last in-person event in 2020. We got the 2020 Penguin Plunge in and the 2020 Winnie Dip in, and it was mid-March 2020 when we shut down the office and bugged out, and then, as you know, the world closed up for a little bit. And so in 2021, we decided, all right, we'll do this as a virtual event. We didn't know how we were going to do it as a virtual event because it had never been done before. So we were doing, other than the fundraising portion, which is an online platform, that remained the same. And since that's really the most important component of this, because all of this money stays in New Hampshire to serve the more than 3,000 athletes of Special Olympics New Hampshire. So the fundraising platform didn't change as a result of COVID, but everything else did. And so we stumbled our way through and figured out a way and found a way, and we pulled off a virtual winter water sports season. We did a virtual high school plunge. We did a virtual Penguin Plunge. We did a virtual Winnie Dip scenario. All of those things happened. It was a tough process in year one, but we learned from that. So we did it again in 2022, and we had the experience of 2021, and I've got to be honest with you, if I do say so myself, we did it better. We did it a lot better. And a couple of things happened here. First of all, we discovered a whole new group of people. Most nonprofit organizations like Special Olympics are very data-driven. You know, we kind of know who our folks are, and we know a lot about those folks. And we found a lot of people that we'd never heard of before. A lot of people, if they didn't have to be at Hampton Beach at 12 noon on a specific day, were more than willing to sign up, do the fundraising thing, have a little fun with a bucket of water or a pail, or jump into a puddle, or we had one guy do it in a bird bath, and whatever. But we found a whole group of people that were willing to show up and do this that we'd never heard of before. We wound up bringing some new folks into the Special Olympics family in New Hampshire. And the other side of the coin was we heard from some friends that we hadn't heard from for a while, some folks that had retired to Florida that, you know, couldn't come back for the plunge or anything. Somebody I know who went to Tennessee, was retired in Tennessee. They did the plunge virtually. So what happened was, for 2022, between the fact that our donors and plungers and dippers kind of got used to this process, and frankly, we got a little bit better at the process, 2022 was the best year we've ever had for the Winnie Dip and the Penguin Plunge. Wow. So it's, for a nonprofit, for any nonprofit, it's not something we can ignore. So we've developed this new hybrid model. When you go to SONH.org to sign up for the Penguin Plunge, you'll be asked very early on in the process, do you want to do this in person or do you want to do it as a do-it-yourself kind of thing? And that determines where the program and the fundraising platform takes you. But this year, overwhelmingly, everyone's coming back to the beach. That's by far the most people that are signing up. But a bunch of folks are still going to be doing this virtually as well. The folks that are doing it virtually, we encourage them and hope that they will post social media, either video or pictures with the hashtag SONH Plunge. Most of the fundraising is done online. If you're doing fundraising, and this happens a lot more with the high school side of things, if you do any fundraising that's in person, if you have any cash, if you have checks or whatever, you can bring those with you the day of the event if you're showing up in person. If you're doing it virtually and you wind up with checks or cash, you can go to any TD Bank branch in New Hampshire and tell them your name, and that it's for the Penguin Plunge, or your particular team or flock name, as the case may be. And they will get it to us, and they will get it to us with the correct information. They do this every year for us, and they are wonderful.
Now, do you have the same groups, a lot of the same groups that do it as teams every year? I'm just curious.
We have an unbelievable amount of. There's the frozen sections. There's the Chili Willies. There's the Shrinky Dinks. There's a whole bunch of different groups that have joined us over the years with some really fun names, and they all have a good time. And as Jim said, you know, when we're on the beach, when we're doing this, we try to minimize the amount of time outside. You know, we do the 10, 9, 8, the countdown thing. And Jim mentioned this earlier. Yeah, 3. At about 3, I know the crowd is moving my way, and the 2-1 kind of just gets lost somewhere along the line. But we also tell everybody, get in, get wet, and get out. We don't want you messing around. We don't want you fooling around. It's cold. It's wet. You're in water. It's wintertime. This is just a little to the left of center anyway, but don't spend too much time doing it. And we, particularly on the Sunday, we wind up occasionally having, you know, a couple of guys, it's usually guys, that have some sort of a bet as to who can stay in the water the longest. And I've announced it on the beach before and will again. If you have that bet, cancel it right now, because otherwise you're going to look silly, because a couple of guys from Fish and Game are going to bounce you right back to the beach. So you get in, just get as wet as you're comfortable getting, and then get to the warming trailer, and then get back into the Hampton Beach Casino ballroom, and then we'll have some awards, and we'll have some great food, and we'll have some fun.
The mob mentality takes over, Sherm, because you got 100+ people standing there all shivering, and it's such a great cause. And the fire and Fish and Game people go in their whole outfits, and they're out there 50 yards. And so you start to get, if you swim to them, I'll give you an extra 100, or if you can get to there. And people are bantering that about, and it's all good until you hit the water.
Yeah.
Then once you hit the water, the only thought is turn around and get out as fast as you possibly can.
Well, whether it's the plunger or the dip, going for a great cause, the Special Olympics of New Hampshire, I guess I want to throw it now to how you gentlemen got involved with Special Olympics of New Hampshire. And Jim, why don't you kick it off on that one?
Well, for me, it's kind of a long one. So in 1970, I was a senior in high school, and the first Special Olympics event took place at Phillips Exeter Academy, and my mom was the director. She was the principal of the Rockingham School for Special Children in Exeter, and Mrs. Shriver had a Special Olympics in 1968 in Chicago, and so she rounded up everybody she could find, Cass Donovan and Ted Seabrook, and we had the first event. I was a senior, and few of my friends and I were gophers and volunteers and timers and measurers, and it was awesome. And it was in Exeter in 70 and again in 71. And then Special Olympics New Hampshire was founded in 72, and it started, the games were moved around a little bit. And so then now I'm an adult and I'm a dad, and I have a son with challenges and disabilities, and he was pretty clear he was going to compete. And so I joined the group at Exeter. Marion Chouinard had a group at Exeter High School, and I piggybacked onto it, and sort of she was willing to let me move in. She was willing to have some help. And Exeter team has been as many as 50 athletes for some of our competitions. And so it's been a lifelong one for me.
And Mark, now, you were involved when you were at WOKQ, and now it's another chapter in your life as a marketing manager, communications director at Special Olympics. Tell us about that and other involvement with the program.
Well, I will in just a second, if you'll indulge me, Sherm. What I will also say here is the things that Coach won't say. The Tufts family is literally the first family of Special Olympics in the state of New Hampshire. If not for Jim's mom, none of us would be at this party. Jim, within Special Olympics, is a legendary coach. His sister is also one of our coaches and local program coordinators. And again, they literally are the first family of Special Olympics in New Hampshire, and that should not be lost on anyone.
Thank you, Mark.
Now, me, I'm just a radio schmo. The very first Penguin Plunge happened with media support of WMUR TV, and that was it. And after that first year, as Jim said, everyone kind of looked at each other and said, hey, it might actually work, and we might be onto something here. And they decided to go looking for a radio media partner. They came to the radio station, as you mentioned, WOKQ, and we started doing this every year. And over the course of the years, I would get tapped to handle other things, hosting duties for things like the opening ceremonies at the summer games at UNH. Basically, when they needed a microphone monkey, they called me. And I'm fine with that because that's kind of what I do. And so the relationship just grew over the years. And at a point when I semi-retired from the world of broadcasting, as you can see, I have it all the way retired. We got together and it was funny, and Jim might understand this better. I kind of walked into this going, I've spent 20 years hanging around these folks. This is going to be easy. And you don't know what you don't know until you realize you don't know it. And so I there was a learning curve going from the world of profit to the world of nonprofit, coupled with the fact that Special Olympics loves their acronyms. It's like the U.S. military. They've got an acronym for everything, and it's a big learning curve.
Now, this year, later in the summer, you got the events going on in Durham, and then locally, Jim, why don't you guys set up a schedule just to give the folks an idea of what's ahead for this year?
Well,
Mark or Jim?
Mark can tell you what happens all year, because Special Olympics is a year-long calendar. And so there's things going on now. There'll be basketball, there'll be swimming, there'll be winter games. Kids are going to go down the slopes and snowshoe. So there's Mark will tell you about the year-long calendar. As far as in Exeter goes, our kids bowled in the fall. Rob Ficara and Kaylee Baxter at the Exeter bowling lanes were just awesome in getting our kids in there and bowling and leading that group. Some of our kids will ski with other groups. Some of our kids will play basketball. But in the spring, we'll start up with track and field. And we'll do it at Exeter High School. And I'll have anywhere from 30 to 50 athletes. And I'll have anywhere from 30 to 50 high school peer coaches that will come out and help us coach the kids and interact with them every day. There are 5 area meets that take place in May. And ours is the Seacoast area meet. And there are 4 others which are qualifying, meaning the kids get to compete and score a time and have the experience leading into the state games, which is the first weekend in June. And that's when all the kids at all the areas and 1,000 athletes will get together in Durham. So that's what we're going to do in Exeter. But Mark can tell you a little bit about the year-long calendar for special.
And that's when Mark gets involved over at Wildcat Stadium, right?
Correct.
Understand, Sherm, that what Coach Tufts is talking about here is Exeter is one of around 65 local programs around the state that are all run, by the way, by incredible individuals like Coach and his sister and so many others. It's an organization with about 5,000 volunteers. And they are really the gasoline that make the whole engine work. So you have these 65 local programs around the state that they're practicing, they're training, or they are competing pretty much all year long. Also, we've got 75 school-based programs, unified sports programs in high schools around the state of New Hampshire. So you have athletes that may not necessarily be part of a local program, but they are part of a unified program at one of these 75 schools around the state. So there is something happening year-round with Special Olympics. Schedule-wise, we've talked about the Penguin Plunge. That's February 11th and 12th. Believe it or not, between the Penguin Plunge and the Winnie Dip, we're doing the state winter games. The state winter games at Waterville Valley are March 5th, 6th, and 7th. And as Jim said, there's alpine skiing, there's cross-country skiing, there's snowboarding, there's snowshoeing. We basically take over Waterville Valley for a few days. And then the Winnie Dip happens. The Winnie Dip is another fundraising opportunity for Special Olympics New Hampshire. This one's a little different. As we talked about earlier, it's at Lake Winnipesaukee where the water is a little bit colder, but ironically, at this point anyway, it's not really frozen. So this may be the first year we don't need the fire department out there chipping away at the beach behind the Margate. So and we're doing something brand new this year. On Friday the 10th, we're doing the middle school dip and the high school dip. We're doing the school dips on a Friday, which clears the way for Saturday. Saturday is our law enforcement dip. And these are officers, many of whom participate in the Law Enforcement Torch Run, which is a big fundraiser that law enforcement in New Hampshire does for Special Olympics New Hampshire. So we have an awful lot of fun with a large group of police officers for the law enforcement dip on Saturday. And then the Winnie Dip is Sunday, the 12th of March. And that's when, we're going to have a whole group of folks. Anybody is eligible for the Winnie Dip. And a few years ago, we started this, and it's still going, believe it or not. Across the Saturday and Sunday, and it's mostly the law enforcement personnel, we do something called the Mega Dip. My understanding is this started down in Rhode Island somewhere, and I'm assuming some adult beverages were involved. But what happens is a group of people dip once an hour for 24 hours. They're hanging out in the hotel. They're having a good time, and at the top of the hour, they go out to the beach. They jump in, they get wet, and they get out, and they do it again an hour later.
Last man standing, so to speak, right?
Well, and that's, candidly, that's why it's law enforcement personnel mostly, because you really got to be in good shape to do that. You have got to be together to get that one done.
You got to be a man's man, a manly man.
Right. Then, of course, throughout the course of the year, there's a state bowling tournament. There's a state softball tournament. The state summer games at UNH, that's the biggest event we do for the athletes. It's the most complicated. It has the most moving parts. We did a mini version of it late last year. It was sort of the summer games in the fall, and it was a one-day event. And it started to rain towards the end of the day anyway. But we're planning on coming back in full force with the full state summer games this year at UNH.
Well, you and I touched base back in the fall at the unified soccer game at Exeter High School, the championship game, and the NHIAA, excuse me, the NHIAA has a program set up for high schools throughout the state of New Hampshire, and it's very successful for several sports. I know I look forward to the Unified Basketball Championship. That's usually over at Lundholm coming up in a couple of months. And anyway, my point being is The athletes, how do the athletes get in touch with the Special Olympics? How do they become potential Olympians?
Everything to do with Special Olympics New Hampshire can be found at SONH.org. If you hop online to SONH.org, that's got information about the program. It has a complete listing of the staff members and what their titles are. If you are an athlete and you have an interest in Special Olympics New Hampshire, Shelby Cody is our manager of programs. Her email is shelbyc@sonh.org. Everybody is, first name, last initial at sonh.org. But all the information is there at sonh.org, and that's also where you can either sign up to plunge or dip, or you can make a donation to plunge or dip.
There you go. And for a lot of folks, it's a labor of love. I know you guys can always use volunteers at your events. Same way of getting in touch with the organization?
Same way of getting in touch with the organization, sonh.org, and we can get you set up. And we still have an office phone number. It might take a few minutes to get someone to get back in touch with you, but 603-624-1250 is the main telephone number for Special Olympics New Hampshire as well.
And what they do, Sherm, is someone from the Seacoast area contacts them, then they'll send us a note saying, connecting a family with a group. And each team has its own little website. So someone gets on and surfs around, they can find who is in their area and who that contact person is in their area. And they're really good, really efficient about making sure if someone does get in touch with them, they connect that family with the appropriate team.
Excellent. Excellent. And I know you and I have been touching base for the dates for this coming year, and I definitely am throwing my hat to help you out any way I can. So, and ditto for you, Mark, over at wherever UNH or wherever you need me, I'll be available for you.
Careful what you wish for.
There you go. Well, it's a good thing, and I like to help organizations that do good things for good people. What I was going to ask, we usually do this thing called the 2-minute drill at the end of our program. Coach, did you have something for the 2-minute drill that you'd like to throw in there?
So I'll just piggyback on what we just finished with. So Sunday, May 7th, starting at 8 o'clock in the morning, we'll have the Seacoast area meet. And it's generally 125 to 150 athletes from the Seacoast area. Exeter, Epping, Raymond, Plastow, Dover, Durham, Rochester, that come to our meet. And it generally takes us about 75 volunteers to run that efficiently. So anybody that would love to come out on a Sunday, May 7th at Exeter High School, starting at 8 in the morning, it's Sherm will tell you one of the wonderful things. I mean, Mark will tell you one of the wonderful things about any of these events is you do it for the. I've had plenty of people come and volunteer and do it for the first time and say, I'm in forever. And it's just such a humbling and warm, and the athletes enjoy it, the families enjoy it, the volunteers enjoy it, and it's a win-win every time. So the next one locally for us in the Exeter area is Sunday, May 7th at Exeter High School, and everybody can find me.
Oh, Mark, I'm going to let you pay it off with the dates and special times. But before, for the 2-minute drill, something that I've been thinking about for a long time, if I got you on the program, you and I had the privilege of working with one of the best radio people that ever hit the airwaves, and in particular right here on the Seacoast, and a beloved figure, Mike Martel. And you and Mike were teammates on the morning waking crew for years. I wanted a Mike Martel story from you.
Mikey was the dearest, sweetest, most wonderful man you could ever possibly meet. He loved puns, maybe a little too much, but he loved his puns, and he loved the radio audience. We did lose Mikey during the worst of COVID. It wasn't COVID related. But unfortunately, there was no ability to have a funeral service. It was right during the initial kind of shutdown of the world. his wife Joanne, who's a dear, sweet, wonderful woman. They loved each other for so many years. Mikey was very, very cognizant of the audience, and at some point, somewhere along the line, and Sherm, you'll understand this, I'm sure it was a radio consultant somewhere, had put it into Mikey's head to not say anything that a parent would be uncomfortable explaining to their child in the car on the way to school. And that became the guidepost that Mikey went by. And I came along, and things got a little edgier for the time, and Mike was trying to find his way with that, but the world was changing a little bit, and Mike was slow to change. And he came to me one day and he said, I want to run a joke by you. It was a joke du jour. I wish I knew you were going to do this, Sherm. I actually have that jingle somewhere. It would take me 5 minutes to find it, but it was the joke du jour, which, by the way, was a copyrighted feature of the Morning Waking crew. And he had a joke that he didn't know if he could get away with. He was concerned that it was going to be upsetting to somebody. And I said, all right, what's the joke? And he said, where does a pirate keep his buccaneers? I said, I don't know. Where does a pirate keep his buccaneers? And he said, under his bucking hat. That was the joke that Mikey was afraid was going to be too risque to put on the radio.
The key dates that people want to be aware of, and also any way they want to get involved, let us know right now, Mark.
Well, let's keep it with SONH.org, where you'll find the information, the calendar of events. There are some things for later in the year that the dates haven't been, completely finalized yet, or the paperwork isn't signed or whatever. So it's sort of a living, breathing thing we add as we go. February 11th and 12th, right now, that's the big focus for us, the Penguin Plunge weekend. As Jim said, if you want to come out Saturday or Sunday, the 11th and 12th at around noontime and be a spectator on the beach, we would love to have you there cheering everyone on. If you want to make a donation, SONH.org, or if you want to sign up, remember, most of the fundraising is done online. You connect it to your existing social media platforms. So you can get this thing done and get what you need to get within a matter of 2, 3, 4 days, depending upon how many friends you have and how open they are to helping you out with doing something a little bit crazy. So if you want to sign up, we've still got enough time for you to do the fundraising that needs to be done. And if it's not your cup of tea, and believe me, I understand that. Jim understands that. A lot of people understand it. If it's not your cup of tea, you can still go to SONH.org and make a donation. And it's important to remember that all that money stays here in New Hampshire. That money stays with our bank accounts. It doesn't go anywhere national.
I have many people ask me when they know the time of WOKQ, ask where Mark Erickson is. He's well, and he's on the radio also. You're also doing some radio, so tell people about that.
Seacoast Oldies in the Portsmouth, Exeter, Dover, Somersworth area, 92.1 or 97.1. I'm on the radio in the afternoon from 3 to 7.
Coach Jim Tufts and Mark Erickson, both of you gentlemen, and all the support folks are to be commended for all the sharing of your time and talents to the organization and the Special Olympians. I know it's a big event every year, this Penguin Plunge, and I definitely wanted to get you on board to talk about that and the organization as a whole. You can listen to the Seacoast Sports Forum on your favorite podcast platform. And don't forget to watch the episodes of the Seacoast Sports Forum on our Seacoast Sports Forum YouTube page. And when you're there, hit the bell to subscribe and like us. And if you have any sports photos or game videos you'd like to send us, or comments, Seacoast Sports Forum at yahoo.com. This is Sherm Chester inviting you to join us for the next edition of the Seacoast Sports Forum.